Good morning, welcome to Counterpoints, everybody. Emily, how you doing?
Good, I like how you used your hands. If you're listening to this, you really missed out on some forceful gesticulation.
That's right, I'm trying to be excited.
Yeah, well,
welcome,
it's working.
Everybody. So, bizarrely, we have Matt Walsh later in the show.
Not so bizarre.
Who's the Daily Wire guy, right? He has a movie out following up on his question about
what is a woman?
What is a woman? Now he's asking, am I a racist?
Right. So we'll get the answer to that question.
I don't have the whole right-wing ecosystem mapped out. Are you guys friends, frenemies? What's the situation as we go in here?
You know, I've interviewed him several times, always fairly friendly. You know, he's probably further to the right than I am, I'll put it that way. So it'll be interesting, but he's very, I mean, this is no surprise, but he's very, very, very popular with a big swath of people on the right, especially younger people on the right. So it kind of makes sense that the movie's doing pretty well. And apart from that, you and I can get into how we reacted to the movie. We'll save that. We'll save that till the end of the show.
Sounds good. And we're also going to, I also have, the Federal Reserve is meeting at 2 o'clock today, so we're not going to have a segment on that. They're going to announce whether or not they're going to be cutting rates 0.25% or 0.5%. That seems to be what people are guessing. If they go 0.5%, it's going to be a signal that they think the economy is a little bit more sluggish than if they go with a 0.25%. I'm putting my money on half. I'm going with a 0.5-point rate cut.
Yeah.
I haven't actually put real money in that. But
not until they cut the rate.
Today at the New York Stock Exchange and elsewhere, people just be gambling about whether it's going to be 1/4 or 1/2 the entire time. Where's your money?
I don't.
Who knows?
It's exactly,
Yeah.
And I think who knows is as good as a guess as you can get right now.
We also have over at DropSite, based on a ream of new documents that we got out of Pakistan, a wild story that Pakistan has agreed to give China access to a naval base in the port of Gwadar, which is a key demand that China has been making of Pakistan for many years now, and is sure to raise the hackles of the United States. And it is another foreign policy failure on the part of the U.S. because we helped overthrow their last government, installed what is supposed to be a pliant U.S. government that has undermined democracy there, U.S.-friendly government there, and instead, it's winding up, they're pushing them closer to China. Crazy how that works.
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about. Actually, I have a lot of questions for you based on that. And Ryan, we should probably start with the biggest news of the day, which is developments from the pager attack. That's probably the best way to put it. Sounds bizarre. If you haven't been following the news, it sounds incomprehensible. Yeah. But we can start looking at, if you're watching this, we can start rolling footage. What are we looking at here, Ryan? So
what you saw there is what is most likely a Hezbollah operative or employee who had a pager not spontaneously, but just suddenly explode. And it sent chaos all through Lebanon, and there were reports of some explosions in Syria as well. So basically what happened here is that in the spring, Israel killed the chief of staff, Hezbollah's chief of staff. And Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah, sent out a message saying, cell phones, you guys are using your cell phones in a sloppy, OPSEC manner, and they have become too much of a risk. Stop with the cell phones. We need to go back to the basics, and we need to use handwritten notes. We need to use couriers. We need to use pagers. At around that time, and this is according to a lot of the reporting that's coming out of the region, and according to the New York Times, they used a Taiwanese company for this. Hezbollah ordered more than 3,000 pagers to implement this new OPSEC policy.
The biggest pager order in the last 10 years.
Probably not, because, you know, maybe hospitals are ordering. I imagine that pagers are ordered in bulk because individual consumers aren't really ordering pagers anymore.
Yeah.
If you're ordering them, it's because you have a system-wide situation. You're going to force people to use them.
Right.
And so somehow Israel got inside the supply chain from Taiwan into Lebanon. And it appears that they were able to install some small amount of explosive. And they were able to also then, tamper with the pagers such that they could remotely trigger them. Initially, there was some thought that they had sent in malware that had raised the temperature of the lithium batteries until they exploded. But if you watch that clip again, you'll see just a sudden explosion. And if it were just a battery heating up, you would first you would see, or first you would feel it getting very hot.
Sure. Yeah.
And some of them, they would just smoke. That's because that's how these crazy malfunctioning cell phones blow up. They smoke for a while and then they blow up. These, boom, just blew up.
Right.
What the reporting also says, and this is extra diabolical, is that the message had the pagers pinging, like making a noise, beep, 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 for a significant amount of time before they exploded, so that the people thought that there was a message from Hezbollah leadership. And so you're seeing an enormous number of injuries, more than 3,000 so far, including, I believe it's 11 dead at this point, including 2 children, because if this pager were in my house, for instance, and I was a Hezbollah operative, my kids might be playing with it.
Well, you can see, actually, if we can even roll A1 again, if you're looking at it, they're surrounded at a market in this case, and you can see 2 little girls.
2 people right there.
There's 2 little girls on the other side of the fruit cart. So there are a lot of details about exactly how this was initiated and with what potential precautions. Who knows? Doesn't look like, obviously, when you see 2 little girls standing around across from the pager explode. So far, it seems pretty logical. You can understand how children were affected by this. Now, Ryan, the Taiwanese company.
Oh, but just to finish what I'm saying, that's why there's so many people went blind, and so many people lost their hands, because it appears that they were like looking at it like and they're like, what's wrong with this? And then it blows.
Now the Taiwanese company, to your point about the supply chain, is saying actually that they made a deal with a Hungarian company that they would use, the Hungarian company would just use the Taiwanese company's branding, but they were in charge of these pagers, and they're saying, these are not our pagers. The Taiwanese company is saying, these are not our pagers. These are, in fact, these came from a Hungarian
if you're
company.
the Taiwanese company. Yeah.
Well, now, or the Hungarian company. But that does add a wrinkle to how this might have been pulled off, to your point about infiltration of the supply chain.
Right, and so what we have also learned is that the scheme was discovered this week, or within the last week. A Hezbollah operative became suspicious about the pagers and was planning to alert leadership about them. He was killed. The reporting suggests that he was killed, he was assassinated by Israel to stop him from telling the leadership. Then a second person found out about it and was planning also to tell leadership, and the plan would have been foiled at that point. And so that's when Israeli military leadership faced a dilemma. And it's a kind of an interesting philosophical question here, because all of the brutality that you see in war gets its just cause by the fact that it's happening, within war, and it's supposed to be aimed at combatants. What happens? So all right. So that's the construct for this. This now is an unprecedented attack. Like, we've never seen anything like this. Everybody now who owns a phone or a pager is wondering, like, could this thing be remotely detonated against me for some reason? So Israel faced this question. Okay, the pager plan was part of an invasion plan. Like, that's what the reporting says. That the idea was, as you're launching the offensive, you blow up the communication system of Hezbollah and at the same time maim and incapacitate a massive portion of the operatives. That's and as a result, you then are more successful in your operation. Israel was not ready to launch an operation, or had decided for whatever reason was not going to launch an operation. So their choice then is, we allow this thing to be rolled up and discovered, and we just wasted this capacity that we had.
An enormous operation, clearly, no matter what. I mean, to be able to have this tech.
Right. Or the other choice is, we press the button and we maim 3,000 plus people. You're definitely going to kill some children and some innocent people. Like, there's just no question about it, because they're going to be near the pagers. But not for the operational value related to your invasion. And so, but it obviously would be a blow to Hezbollah. But you're only in a kind of soft war with Hezbollah. You're not in a hot open war with Hezbollah. And facing that choice of stepping back, not launching, not pressing the button because it's not part of your operation, and maiming the 3,000 plus people, they decided we're just gonna take the casualties, even if it's not part of even if it's not part of our strategy, because now it's just well, we could really hurt 3,000 people or we could not, and we're going to go with we could. And I think what that shows is that there's really very, very little contemplation about the idea of just coexisting.
It's interesting
because that's the other thing you could do, is you could say, okay, you know what, we're actually going to sign the ceasefire deal, at which point Hezbollah stops launching its rockets. Hezbollah has said that they will stop launching rockets if there's a ceasefire deal reached. When there was a week-long ceasefire in November to exchange hostages, all the rockets from Hezbollah stopped, all the rockets from the Houthis stopped, all the rockets from the Syrian and Iraqi militias that are proxies of Iran, they all stopped. Which shows that, like, coexistence and peace, like, it is possible. And it has to be possible. We live on this planet together. And I think what this shows is that they're like, no, it's just not. And maybe their calculation is correct, that just coexistence isn't possible.
Right.
But then what a bleak world. So, okay, so your country then is just going to exist on endless war against all of its neighbors forever? Like, that's really your plan? Who's paying for that?
Well, I was going to
say,
us? Definitely. And it's, I take the cynical perspective on that. What do you make of, so the Iranian ambassador to Lebanon, according to reports, had a pager and he lost one eye, severely injured his other eye. That's quite interesting that the Iranian, a lot of people would say, of course, the Iranian ambassador to Lebanon had one of these pagers, but the geopolitical ripple effect of this, obviously, on the one hand, it's hard to have a more targeted approach than literally the pager in someone's pocket. On the other hand, we know that it's going to explode in a way that doesn't just affect that person, and if it's not in their pocket and their kids are playing with it, obviously there are consequences that are beyond just taking out single individuals, but also just geopolitically, they wipe out a huge amount of operatives. Why is, or what happens when you have the Iranian ambassador implicated in the amount of people who were taken out?
Well, two things there. One is, so it reminded me of Jeremy Scahill's interview with the second in command of PIJ, and he asked him, he said, people accuse you of being supported by Iran.
Right.
And the guy said, yeah, of course.
Yeah, right.
Like, we're allies with Iran. Like, they support our cause. We appreciate that they support our cause.
Right. Why would we not accept their support from our perspective?
That's great. And so, Iran supports Hezbollah. Iran's going to therefore coordinate with Hezbollah. It is interesting that Iran hasn't even yet responded to the last provocation.
Right.
The attack, the assassination of Hania outside of Tehran. And now there's another one. And it is getting to a point where a lot of Palestinians and supporters of Palestine around the world are saying that, Iran actually isn't capable, they don't think anymore, of launching any kind of serious attack. That maybe that very slow 72-hour drone attack that they launched in response to whatever previous provocation, maybe that's what they've got. Maybe that's it. Maybe they weren't holding back. And now Hezbollah, seems to be seriously weakened. Like, I don't know how many operatives they have. And you can always recruit more. Right. But it's also a blow to their communication system. Because now what do? I guess they can go back to pagers, but now they're going to be, they have to be very careful about where they get their pagers from. Right. If they go back to phones, then that helps Israel with its cyber technology get closer to more assassinations across the board. They've been assassinating Hezbollah leaders left and right. There was a book a couple years ago that we're helping turn into a podcast drop site called Palestine Laboratory, which is about how Israel's weapons industry is one of the world's most sophisticated because, as Israel puts it, they get to use the occupied territories as a laboratory for their weapons, where they are using experimental weapons on civilian populations and also on militant groups and developing better weapons technologies as a result. And this is an interesting example of that.
Yeah, that's a really
So
interesting
we haven't
point.
seen the last of this probably.
We can put the next element up on the screen, just breaking down the various other aspects here. So Hezbollah is vowing to respond, obviously, at this point. So Ryan, one of my questions for you is, to the point about Iran not having responded to the assassination of Hania outside Tehran yet, what potentially could a response from Hezbollah look like? What might be, what should people perhaps expect?
I mean, they supposedly have some significant kind of hypersonic missile technology that they've been saving. Like, so everybody's been, the thinking is that everybody's been holding back a little bit because A, they don't want a regional war, and B, they want to have their stockpiles if they do have a regional war. The Houthis sent a hypersonic missile into Tel Aviv several days ago, which caused significant damage, and they've claimed that they're going to be sending dozens more in the coming days. And
actually, we should put A3 up. 4 Israeli soldiers were killed in an ambush by Hamas fighters just yesterday as well. So
yeah, including, I believe, and 5 others wounded, three quite seriously, as well as another Israeli officer seriously wounded in a separate clash in Rafah. So this continues to go on. This this is one of the more significant casualty events for the IDF. 4 deaths and 3 serious injuries at a time in an ambush, which shows that despite the incredible military superiority and 11 months in, having troops amidst a population of 1.5 to 2 million people who are hostile to them, long term is going to continue to be extraordinarily difficult and lead to these types of casualties.
And that brings us to the final element here. This is from DropSite, actually, about the, so I'll just read the headline. New Gaza health numbers show Israel kills 2 babies every day with no end in sight. Also, if you're just listening to this, the header photo on this, Ryan, is brutal.
One of those mass graves.
Yeah.
And so Sharif Abdel Qaddus, correspondent for DropSite, you may have seen he obtained the health ministry's latest data over the weekend, and we converted it into a downloadable PDF form and a CSV that people can check out, because it has, of the 40,000 plus casualties, it has about 34,000 of them that have names and IDs and ages and birth dates and gender to them. There are obviously going to be some mistakes. People can go sift through it. You might find duplicates, here or there. There have been mistakes discovered in previous Ministry of Health data that they've put out, but they've been in the range of just a handful of names been mistaken. They then update and fix that data. Kind of shocking that they're still able to even produce a document of this length and this detail.
That's a good point.
At this point,
you mean the infrastructure?
Yeah. And it's also just devastating indictment of what's been going on. It's the first, I think, 14 pages are children under 1. It just goes on and on and on and on.
Like the conflict itself,
Yes.
which, to the point that this brings us to, which is there's really no end in sight.
Right. There seems to be nobody saying, like, well, what if we don't do this? What if we just coexist here?
Well, it seems.
I think there is a deal. There is a deal to be had. Like Iran, Lebanon, the Iraqi militias, the Houthis, like they all have better things to do. Like they all have domestic problems to deal with. Israel has better things to do.
But there's
just carry out a genocide inside its occupied territories.
I don't remember if this was in one of Jeremy Scahill's interviews, but even the persistent point that people are making, whether it's from Israel or from Palestinians or Hamas leaders, is what's the point of a so-called ceasefire when we know what's going to happen a month later, 2 months later, 6 months later? What's the point? And there's just no trust that the other side is not going to egregiously violate it under the auspices that something changed, even if those aren't legitimate. And that's basically what's been going on for half a century plus.
Yeah. And while Hania was negotiating the ceasefire and then was assassinated, he was then replaced as the top leader of Hamas with Yahya Sinwar, who recently put out a statement saying that, okay, if there's not going to be a ceasefire, we, the Houthis, Hezbollah, the Iraqi militias, we're going to continue fighting, and we're going to do it until we've driven Israel completely out of the region. Which, the Hamas charter supports a two-state solution. Like they have been pressured into agreeing to that situation. Now, under this conflict, they're saying, you know what? All right, if there's no ceasefire, it's going to be a war of attrition. That their belief, or their stated belief at least, is that because so many Israelis have other passports, because they can move to the United States, they can move to Europe, that as the economy collapses and endless war continues, that those citizens are going to choose at that point to move to those safer places. Whereas the Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza don't even have that option. Like, they can't leave. You can, if you raise enough money on GoFundMe or have enough support somewhere, potentially get to Egypt, and then you can fight to go somewhere else. But it's a massive uphill climb for that to happen. Whereas from their perspective, all an Israeli has to do is just go to the airport and fly to where they have citizenship elsewhere, which goes to their kind of fundamental ideological belief that half the countries aren't legitimately native to the region anyway. And that's what you're seeing in that thought that where they believe they can win a war of attrition because they don't have anywhere to go.
Right.
Well, I don't know if they're right or not. But it's not pretty. Like,
in the context of the story that we just had up on the screen, 2 babies every day. Just awful.
Yeah.
Hey, if you liked that video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to Breaking Points.
If you want to see the rest of Counterpoints, go to breakingpoints.com to become a premium member and get the full uncut show every morning in your inbox and on Spotify.